Leave my levels alone!
Guys, I think I like this game. When it came out on October 30th, 2001, the whole gaming landscape was different. It hadn't been too long since Naughty Dog's original trilogy released and people could still easily access them. Now, things have changed. Almost every Crash game since Warped has switched up the formula, throwing out warp rooms and linear levels for open world environments, beat 'em up sections, and cutscenes that parody different animation styles. Only 2 new games have tried to faithfully emulate what Naughty Dog accomplished. Crash Bandicoot 4 is About Time by Toys for Bob, and Crash Bandicoot The Wrath of Cortex by Traveller's Tales. These days, Wrath of Cortex is no longer just a boring retread of the past. It's a return to the winning formula that we've had so little of over the past 23 or so years. Context matters, and now that I've played through this game 106%, I think it deserves another look. Now, I'm not saying it's perfect. The story is pretty simple. Uka Uka is annoyed that Crash keeps ruining his quest for universal domination, so he holds a meeting to see if his minions can figure out a plan to get rid of the Bandicoot for good. Entropy says that Cortex might have been working on a new project, and when Engine tries to explain more, Cortex seems like he doesn't want to talk about it for some reason. Why? Why doesn't he want to say anything about his new super weapon until he's forced to? Is he planning some kind of revolt against Uka Uka? That would have been interesting, actually. All he's missing is the power source, apparently, and Uka Uka comes up with the idea to use the elementals, masks that previously wreaked havoc on Earth. Meanwhile, on Earth, Crash, Coco and Aku Aku experience a bunch of natural disasters, like an erupting volcano and a huge wave. Aku Aku goes to that place from Crash Bash to speak to Uka Uka and finds out that yes, the elementals have been released from their prisons. He tells Crash and Coco, who can't stay awake during his explanation for some reason. Bit rude. When Mel Winkler's telling you a story, you listen to it. And they go to a VR hub that Coco has created between games. This VR hub is functionally identical to the Time Twister from Crash Warped, which means it has 5 separate warp rooms plus a secret warp room accessed after you collect at least 5 relics. Already, the music stands out as being pretty great. Not my favourite soundtrack in this series, but it screams early 2000s. The warp room theme is a remix of the one from Warped, which was amazing, so obviously this one is good too. Every level's music just goes so hard. It doesn't matter if you're playing Arctic Antics or Wizards and Lizards or Bamboozled, everything just sounds like it means business. One interesting thing about this game is that it assumes you've played previous Crash games before, so even the first level has a bonus with more than 5 boxes and a death route. That's right, a death route is in the first level. I like how the death platform icon changes depending on the level. This one has a cozy little scarf. He's just a cold little guy. The goal of each level is to find the well-hidden crystal, but you can also get gems by breaking all the boxes. Classic stuff. Now, in previous games, death routes might have had breakable boxes in them, so you'd have to travel along the death route and then back again. Here, that's not the case. Every death route is standalone, so you don't have to worry about backtracking after you get the gem. Actually, what you can do, like previous games, is fall into a pit or something after you've collected a special gem, and you'll respawn at the checkpoint before the death platform with it still in your inventory. That way you can complete the level in a single run through. The same goes for gem platforms, which appear after you get the required colour gem. They have no breakable boxes along their paths either, or at least ones that can't be destroyed with a nitro detonator, and it's such a quality of life improvement over Crash 2 and 3, mostly Crash 2. When you head back to the warp room, Crash does the usual thing of pulling those crystals and gems out of his back pocket and wait a minute, hang on a second, where's the Crash dance? You know, the iconic Crash dance that everyone knows. Where is it? Okay, fine, I'll do it myself. Not having the Crash dance is crazy to me. Even weirder is that it doesn't appear in Crash Bandicoot 4 either, at least not in-game, so that's 2 versions of Crash 4 that decided not to include it. Why? The controls in this game are a bit floaty, but not terrible. I think they're alright actually. They remind me of Spyro Enter the Dragonfly, which had super slow controls that were totally different to the original trilogy. But that was because the developers didn't have access to the code from the PS1 games, and I think something similar happened here, especially because Mark Cerny was not involved at all when he was originally planned to be involved at the beginning, but for some reason the floatier controls don't really bother me as much here. Maybe the game is just better designed around them. That is of course until I get to a climbing area, which in this game goes by so slow. Look at the speed he's going here, you can't go any faster. In time trials this is an absolute nightmare, especially in this level here, Gold Rush. In the words of a beloved YouTube celebrity, what were they thinking? Anyway, let's talk about level variety. Wrath of Cortex follows the warped formula, which means that in addition to normal platforming levels, there are also gimmicky levels where Crash swims underwater or flies a plane or whatever the heck this thing is. In this game, they try and switch things up a bit by fusing two gameplay styles together in some levels. For example, in Compactor Reactor, you start off in a minecart which feels a bit like a roller coaster, but after you get to the end of the track, you end up in one of Cortex's facilities and it turns into a traditional platforming stage. Likewise, there's an underwater level where you swim as Crash with his scuba gear, but then you transition into controlling a mechanical submarine, similar to the underwater levels in Crash Warped. But there's also another level where you exit the submarine and enter a Cortex facility through an underwater cave on foot, transitioning to classic platforming. I absolutely love this. It makes these levels feel more adventurous than previous games. One slightly divisive gimmick that entire levels are built around is the Atmosphere, which is a ball that Crash controls by running in it like a hamster wheel. I remember not liking it that much as a kid, but now I actually find it fun. The levels have these loop sections where you can let loose and make the ball go super fast, and it feels like you're at a theme park. It's momentum based, which is cool. They're not my favourite levels, but I do think they're worth being in the game. The underwater levels I have mixed feelings on. Sure, they look great and there's a bunch of different fish you can encounter, much more than Crash Warped, but there are so many mines that drop from above. A ridiculous amount actually. You'll be hearing the sound of them in your sleep. And when you get to the time trials, hoo boy. Especially one level that's entirely underwater, so you have to deal with mines the entire way, unlike the levels that transition to traditional platforming. Speaking of transitions, here's one where I ask you to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this. I'd really appreciate it. There's one gimmick type that I missed though, and that's riding an animal. There's no polar or para equivalent, and it's a real shame. But to be fair, I'd rather have more actual platforming stages. Coco is here though. This is her platforming debut, and while two of her levels transition to an escape from some kind of force of nature, her first level is exclusively traditional platforming. She doesn't gain access to a double jump, and she can't slide. Instead, she just does this pathetic tackle with her foot, but she has most of Crash's moveset. I like her levels. They're visually striking, and this one, where she rides away from a tsunami on a scooter, is just super fun. When you get to the end of it, you can hop onto a gem path and jump across boats in a section of the city that's just been flooded by the tsunami that you were just running away from. It's a really cool idea. In terms of levels that are just complete duds, I can only think of one, that sinking feeling. Everything about this is just weird. First of all, what is Crash even flying in? A mechanical dragonfly? Secondly, you have to lock onto enemy ships before you fire rockets at them, which means you'll be sitting duck for a couple of seconds as enemy ships fire at you. Thirdly, the mechanical dragonfly has the defensive capabilities of a Nintendo Labo. It doesn't take long before the cardboard disintegrates. And good luck with the time trial. I suppose I should talk about that now. Like Crash Warped, you can play each level in time trial mode, which turns certain crates into time crates and will reward you with a sapphire, gold or platinum relic depending on how long it took you to beat. In this game, there's no special gem for getting all gold relics or better, so you only need sapphire relics for 106% completion. That's how it should be. Take note, Toys for Bob or Iron Galaxy or whoever's making Crash 5. Getting gold relics or platinum relics should be a completely optional thing you do for fun, not something that's required for full completion, in my opinion. I'm not a fan of time trials in any game, to be honest, but here I found them to be quite easy, at least in terms of getting the sapphire relics. I even netted myself a few golds and platinums. Like Crash Warped, every 5 relics unlocks a special stage in the secret warp room, but in this game, because there's no secret entrances to previous levels, every level in the secret warp room is brand new. Well, I say that, but Nighttime, the first level, is actually a modified version of the Gauntlet, which is a level in the 3rd warp room, but the rest of them are their own thing, so I won't spoil them. Okay, it's crunch time. Cortex's secret weapon happens to be another mutated Bandicoot, one which is buff as heck. Crunch is a cool addition to the Crash Bandicoot cast and is suitably menacing during the game's events. He serves as the only real boss in the entire game, but each fight is different because he's powered up by one elemental mask per warp room. For example, the first mask gives him the ability to create a rocky shell to roll around in, and Crash, in his Atmosphere, has to turn the smaller rocks blue in order to damage him. That's because Aku Aku is visibly helping out, which is cool to see in each fight, except for the second boss fight that is, which is similar to Entropy's fight from Crash Warped. It just requires Crash to dodge projectiles and spin Crunch when he reaches him, so Aku Aku isn't really needed here. But the fact that Aku Aku appears in most boss fights is great because it shows that the elementals are so powerful that even Aku Aku has to step into the fray. Speaking of the elementals, there are 4 of them, and each one is voiced by a prominent actor. We've got Thomas F. Wilson voicing Rocco, who you might recognise as Biff Tannen from Back to the Future.
What are you looking at, fuzzhead? I'm Rocco, the Earth Elemental. Uka Uka and Dr. Cortex woke me from my captive slumber, and now I'm free to pulverize whatever gets in my way. Oh, don't even think about collecting those crystals, Runt. Because if you do, I'm gonna bury you alive.
R. Lee Ermey of all people from Full Metal Jacket voicing Wawa.
Ah! Get over
over here, you little orange sponge!
Mark Hamill as Pyro, who is Mark freaking Hamill.
I realize my brethren have had some trouble with you, my little orange friend, but I'm not quite sure why. Is it getting hot in here? Is it safe to be wearing that fur? It looks flammable!
And Jess Harnell was Lolo, who would actually go on to voice Crash himself in later games.
The Crash Bandicoot, eh? Oh, I've heard so much about you, and this is the hero I have to blow away? Huh! Seems like a bunch of hot air to me.
These elementals don't have a huge amount of dialogue, but when they do speak, it's an absolute treat.
Crash Bandicoot! You've got some nerve setting foot into my domain without an invitation. Don't talk back to me! I'll fix that attitude problem of yours!
Alright then. One thing I really like about this game actually is that because Crunch is the only boss fight, the bosses from previous games actually appear in quite a few levels. So in these levels where Crash flies a plane or Coco flies a spaceship, you can actually see characters like Tiny and Engine and Entropy flying these enemy planes. And then in the atmosphere levels, the obstacles are actually these bosses from the previous games. It's a way of getting them into the game without them actually being boss fights, and I think it's really cool. Now, I mentioned a double jump earlier, and that's because Crash gains abilities after each boss fight, similar to Crash Warped. They're pretty much the same as the previous game, except for one new addition, sneaking over nitro crates. It's completely situational and has no use outside of those very specific platforming sections. The Super Body Slam is here as well, but it's hidden within one of the levels. It's an interesting idea to do that, but I never really found a use for it, to be honest. Another thing that's interesting about this game is the fact that it was the first multi-platform Crash game. Sure, Crash was synonymous with the PS1 back in the 90s, but technically Sony was just the publisher, not the rights holder. So when Universal had the opportunity to bring Crash to more than just a PlayStation, they seized the opportunity. That means this game was available on PS2, GameCube, and Xbox. There are slight differences depending on the version, and the Xbox version is technically the best in terms of loading times and visuals, but the game is pretty much identical otherwise. There aren't different levels in the GameCube version, for example. I played the PS2 version through an emulator for this video, but beware, if you play it on an actual PS2, the loading times will be incredibly slow. Much worse on the original PS2 release, actually. The Greatest Hits version cut them down, but they're still not amazing. Oh, if you do decide to play through an emulator, be aware that the underwater levels and the last main level, Cortex Vortex, might have annoying artifacts unless you switch to software rendering. It means you can't upscale the internal resolution when you do that, but at least the artifacts will be gone. Crash Bandicoot The Wrath of Cortex is a game that I think time has been kind to. It's now one of the only post-Naughty Dog Crash games that try to emulate their formula, and it does it well for the most part. The levels are varied and visually striking with fun platforming gameplay. The music is so early 2000s that it hits me right in the nostalgia, and getting 106% completion is less frustrating than getting full completion in Crash Warped. I think it's worth giving it a revisit if you haven't played it in years, and if you've never played Wrath of Cortex before, now is a great time to do so. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and smash that like button. Have a great day or night wherever or whenever you are, and I will see you next time.